Next item is a little clip. All this does is retains the wiring harness for the rotary solenoid on the choke. Then the actual rotary solenoid for the choke. Wire simply drops into this clip. Incidentally, these are the wires that power up the choke. The ground wire is the shielded one. So if you accidentally leave this unplugged, you have a hot wire that can flop around and short out. If it does, it'll blow fuse number 2 on the control box. Why on earth Honda decided to insulate the ground and leave the positive an uninsulated terminal is beyond me. It's not the only thing I have mentioned to them that they really didn't care to hear my opinion. But they simply plug in and the wire clip keeps them out of the way. This is the choke link clip. These are famous for breaking. I would strongly suggest replacing the choke link clip and throttle link clip anytime you have one apart. They're cheap enough, readily available. It's easy to tell the difference. Incidentally, they are not identical. The choke link clip has a smaller hole. This is the large hole. That's a throttle link clip. And it goes right into the top of the governor arm. The choke link clip has the smaller hole, and it goes into the rotary solenoid for the choke. Choke link, one end of it goes into the hole on the choke linkage on top of the carburetor. The other end goes into the choke link clip on the rotary solenoid. The throttle link has a really small spring next to it. The purpose of this spring is to keep it from surging. If you put it together without that spring, which would be like this, the throttle can actually move a slight bit without the whole governor arm moving. So it has free play. With that spring in it, it puts tension on the throttle shaft at all times to reduce the likelihood of any movement. So that little spring goes in first. One end of it goes into the same hole on the throttle shaft linkage as the throttle link goes into. The other end goes in this small hole on the governor arm. So now there's just a little bit of tension on the throttle shaft so that it doesn't freely rattle around. So if you've got one surging, check and make sure that that small spring wasn't inadvertently left off. Next step will be to go ahead and assemble the radiator and the cooling fan. The cooling fans, incidentally, have 3 holes, 120-degree spacing, so that the fan can be bolted any of 3 ways. However, they need to be installed so that the wire will be hanging down at the bottom and the words would be right side up. The reason for this, as I tell people over the phone, is if you look, there is a drain hole right here at the bottom. That's for humidity that collects in the fan to drain out of. If it is installed in the incorrect position, the drain hole is no longer at the bottom and it'll shorten the service life of the cooling fan drastically. Assembling the cooling fan is straightforward. There are shoulders on either side of the stud. The fan slides down onto. Originally from Honda, the cooling fans are held in place with 3 5mm screws. I generally use bolts instead of the screws. The only reason for this is with the cooling fan assembled and the generator in the truck, it's a whole lot easier to slide an end wrench down here and get the bolts out than it would be to try and slide a Phillips head screwdriver and still get enough bite on the Phillips head screwdriver to get the screws out, especially if they have just a little bit of rust on them. Because the stator assembly is right here, and you've got to get an end wrench down here to loosen these up, and it just makes life a lot easier on the next mechanic who's coming along behind you. Wiring harness for the cooling fan is held in place by these little black wire clips. They are not critical. In fact, most of the generators that come in for repair, those wire clips have been broken off or torn loose during the changing of a cooling fan. And that's probably as good a place as any to take a break.